Let me describe a moment to you and tell me if this sounds familiar. You've been investing for a few years now. Maybe 3 years, maybe 5. You've been diligently putting money into your 401k or your brokerage account. You've been doing everything right, maxing out contributions when you can, buying index funds, not panic selling, following all the advice. And yet, when you log into your account, something feels off. Your balance is maybe $15,000, maybe $25,000, and you do the math in your head. At this rate, it's going to take you 40 years to become a millionaire. You start to wonder if this whole investing thing is even worth it. You're sacrificing lattes and vacations and experiences today for a future that feels impossibly far away. You're watching compound interest supposedly work its magic, but the magic looks a lot like your money just sitting there doing absolutely nothing. Here's what nobody tells you. The first $50,000 is a completely different game than everything that comes after. The journey from zero to $50,000 invested is brutal. It's slow. It's demoralizing. It makes you question whether compound interest is just a lie that finance people tell to sell books. But something genuinely changes when you cross that threshold. The math shifts, the psychology shifts, the momentum shifts, and suddenly, the same amount of effort that took you 5 years to build $50,000 might only take you 3 years to build the next $50,000, and then 2 years for the next, and then maybe 18 months after that. My name is Bobby, and I spend way too much time obsessing over the invisible inflection points in personal finance that nobody talks about. If you're someone who's been grinding away at investing and wondering when it's going to start feeling real, if you've ever looked at your portfolio and thought this is going to take forever, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Because today we're going to break down why $50,000 is the most important milestone in your entire investing journey, and why everything accelerates after you hit it. Here's the fundamental problem with how we think about investing. We're taught that compound interest is this magical exponential force that turns small amounts of money into massive wealth. And that's technically true. But here's what the charts and the calculators don't show you. Compound interest is basically useless when you don't have any money. Let me explain what I mean. Compound interest works as a percentage. If you earn 10% returns on your investments, you make 10% of whatever you have. If you have $1,000 invested and you earn 10%, congratulations. You made $100. That's not life-changing. That's not even rent. That's barely a nice dinner. Now, let's say you grind for a few years and you get that balance up to $10,000. That same 10% return gives you $1,000. Better. That's actually a noticeable amount of money, but it's still not moving the needle in any meaningful way. It's not creating the wealth snowball you were promised. This is why so many people give up on investing in the early years. They do the math and realize that their portfolio gains are basically a rounding error in their financial life. They're contributing $500 a month, and their investment returns are adding maybe $50. The effort to reward ratio feels completely broken. And honestly, it is broken at this stage. The early years of investing are not about compound interest. They're about raw accumulation. You're filling a bucket. The bucket isn't working for you yet. You're just filling it. But here's where the math changes, and it changes dramatically. Let's say you finally cross the $50,000 threshold. You've been grinding for years. You've sacrificed. You've automated your contributions. And now you have $50,000 sitting in your investment accounts. That same 10% annual return that gave you $100 when you had $1,000, that same percentage return now gives you $5,000 in a single year. Let that sink in. $5,000. That's not a rounding error anymore. That's a month's salary for many people. That's a vacation. That's a significant chunk of a car. Your money is now generating real, tangible returns that you can actually feel. And here's the psychological shift that happens. When your investments are generating $400 a month in returns on average, you start to see investing differently. It stops being this abstract thing you do because you're supposed to. It starts being a wealth-generating machine that's working for you while you sleep. The motivation compounds along with the returns. But we need to talk about why $50,000 specifically and not $30,000 or $75,000. There's actually research on this from a study by a financial planner named Charlie Munger's partner. No, I'm kidding. But there is real data here. The $50,000 threshold is significant for a few reasons. First, the math crosses a psychological tipping point. At $50,000 invested, assuming historical average returns of around 10%, you're generating about $5,000 per year in investment gains. That $5,000 is roughly equivalent to what many people can save in a year from their actual income, which means at $50,000, your money's contribution starts to equal your contribution. You're no longer the only one filling the bucket. The bucket is starting to fill itself at the same rate you're filling it. This is the moment where you become a partnership between you and your money instead of just you doing all the work. Second, the acceleration becomes visible. Let me walk you through the actual math because this is where it gets really interesting. Let's say you're investing $500 per month and earning an average of 10% annually. To go from $0 to $50,000 takes about 6.5 years. You're grinding, it's slow, you're contributing $6,000 per year, and your investment gains are small because the base is small. But then watch what happens. To go from $50,000 to $100,000 takes only about 4.5 years. You're still contributing the same $500 per month. But now your investment gains are doing heavy lifting. You're earning $5,000 to $8,000 per year in returns on top of your contributions. The bucket is filling faster because it's helping fill itself. To go from $100,000 to $200,000 takes about 5 years. To go from $200,000 to $400,000 takes about 6 years. To go from $400,000 to $800,000 takes about 7 years. You're doubling your money in roughly the same time, regardless of how big the number gets, because percentage growth is percentage growth. But here's the mind-bending part. In that final 7-year period, where you went from $400,000 to $800,000, your investments generated $400,000 in gains. $400,000. That's more than most people earn from their job in that time period. Your money is now out-earning you. And it all started with crossing that $50,000 threshold where the snowball first started to become real. Now you might be thinking, okay, Bobby, but I'm nowhere near $50,000. I have $8,000 in my Roth IRA, and this video is making me feel worse, not better, and I hear you. But here's why this should actually motivate you. Understanding that the first $50,000 is the hardest should change how you think about the grind. You're not failing. You're not behind. You're in the accumulation phase. This phase is supposed to be hard. Every single wealthy person went through this exact same brutal early period where their money wasn't really working for them yet. Warren Buffett made 99% of his wealth after age 50. But he couldn't have made that wealth without spending his 20s and 30s grinding to build the base. The first $50,000 is the foundation. It's not sexy. It doesn't feel like progress. But it's the most important money you'll ever accumulate because it's what everything else gets built on. Here's something else that happens at $50,000 that nobody talks about, and it might be more important than the math. Your behavior changes. When you have $50,000 invested, you have skin in the game in a way that you didn't before. A 20% market crash when you have $5,000 invested costs you $1,000. That stings, but it's not devastating. A 20% market crash when you have $50,000 invested costs you $10,000. That's real money. And that experience of losing $10,000 on paper does something to your psychology. It either breaks you or it forges you. The people who make it through their first major downturn with $50,000 or more on the line become different investors. They learn that they can survive volatility. They learn that recoveries happen. They develop the emotional calluses required to be a long-term investor. This is why so many people who have never experienced a real market crash with real money on the line make terrible decisions when one finally happens. They've never been tested. But the people who crossed $50,000 and then watched it drop to $35,000 and then recovered and kept going, those people become wealthy. Not because they're smarter, because they've been forged. Let me talk about what I call the contribution versus growth crossover, because this is the invisible milestone that changes everything. When you first start investing, your account balance is almost entirely made up of money you contributed. You put in $10,000. You have $10,000 plus maybe a few hundred in gains. Your contributions are 97% of your balance. Your investment growth is 3%. This feels discouraging because you're doing all the work. But somewhere around the $50,000 to $100,000 mark, something flips. Your cumulative investment gains start to represent a larger and larger share of your balance. By the time you have $200,000 invested, assuming you've been investing for 10 or 15 years, you might have contributed $120,000 and earned $80,000 in investment growth. Your money is now responsible for 40% of your wealth. By the time you hit $500,000, you might have contributed $200,000 and earned $300,000 in growth. Your money has out-contributed you. It's doing more work than you are. And by the time you're at $1,000, you might have contributed $300,000 over your lifetime, and your investment growth has generated $700,000. You are no longer the primary builder of your wealth. Your money is. This crossover is the entire point of investing. It's when you stop trading your time for money and start having your money generate money. But you cannot get there without slogging through the early years, where your contributions are everything and your growth is nothing. The $50,000 mark is usually right around where people start to see this shift happening, where their quarterly statements start showing investment gains that actually matter, where they realize the machine is starting to work. Now, let me give you the tactical framework for actually getting to $50,000, because theory is useless without execution. The fastest way to $50,000 is to increase your savings rate, not your investment returns. Hear me out. In the early accumulation phase, trying to optimize your investment returns from 8% to 10% barely matters. You're fighting over scraps. If you have $10,000 invested, the difference between an 8% return and a 10% return is $200 per year. But if you increase your monthly contribution from $400 to $600, that's an extra $2,400 per year going into your investments. The return optimization gave you $200. The savings rate optimization gave you $2,400. It's not even close. This is why all those people obsessing over which index fund has a 0.03% expense ratio versus a 0.05% expense ratio are completely missing the point. They're optimizing for the wrong variable. In the early years, every single dollar of additional contribution matters more than every fraction of a percentage in returns. You cannot compound your way to $50,000 quickly. You have to contribute your way there. Here's the brutal truth that I want to leave you with, because I think it reframes this whole conversation. The journey to wealth has two distinct phases, and most people quit during the first one because they don't know the second one exists. Phase 1 is the grind, $0 to $50,000. Maybe $0 to $100,000 depending on your income and savings rate. This phase is entirely about sacrifice. It's about automation. It's about finding ways to increase the gap between your income and your expenses and shoveling every dollar of that gap into investments. It's about delayed gratification with minimal visible reward. The compound interest machine is technically running, but it's not producing anything meaningful yet. This phase sucks, and it takes years. Phase 2 is the acceleration. This is everything after $50,000 or $100,000. This phase is where compound interest actually starts earning its reputation. Your contributions still matter, but they're supplemented by meaningful investment growth. The snowball is rolling downhill. Each year, it picks up more speed. The same effort that gave you $50,000 in 6 years gives you another $50,000 in 4 years, and another $100,000 in 5 years. Here's what gets me. Most people give up in phase 1 because they can't see phase 2. They look at their $12,000 balance after 2 years of grinding and think, this is pointless. They don't realize they're 40% of the way to a threshold that will completely change the game. They quit at mile 10 of a marathon because miles 1 through 10 were hard, not realizing that miles 11 through 26 get progressively easier as you get momentum. This is why financial literacy matters so much. It's not about knowing which stocks to pick. It's about understanding the shape of the journey, so you don't give up when you're in the hardest part. The first $50,000 is the hardest. Every dollar after that gets easier, not because money falls from the sky, but because your money starts fighting alongside you instead of just sitting there. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're just in the accumulation phase. And if you keep going, you'll cross the threshold where everything changes. Not if. When. If this video helped you see your investing journey differently, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe for more content that breaks down the hidden math of building wealth. Share it with someone who's grinding and feeling like it's not working. I promise them it is working. They just can't see it yet. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.